Hi, fourth grade. We're back for Read Aloud. We just finished chapter 10 in the last video. And now we have one of those little news editions right before chapter 11. I don't know if you guys remember these from Aurora County, but it's kind of an in-between chapter that just gives information from the newspaper. So I'm going to use my newspaper voice. Special edition, June 17th, the Aurora County News. Snippets from Snowburgers, an occasional column on the deceased of Aurora County. Mr. Norwood Reinhardt Bogart Boyd, claimed by death Thursday morning by Comfort Snowburger, historian, recipe tester, and funeral reporter, with help from Goldie Sugars, Snowburger's resident archivist. We here at Snowburger's Funeral Home live to serve. We pride ourselves on knowing everybody who has died in our county. We keep careful records of all the deceased and their resting places. So you can imagine the sheer surprise of it all when Bunch Snowburger was called away from his work table, where he was carefully preparing Mr. Clark Terry for his funeral in eternal rest, to ride Sheriff Taylor over in the hearse to the nearby Mabel home of Mr. Norwood Reinhardt Bogart Boyd, a closed-up, veritable haunted house of a place, full of old treasures from long-ago travels, and Mr. Norwood Boyd. A mysterious phone call alerted Doc McCree to the death. "I thought he'd died eons ago," said Goldie Sugars, Snowburger's resident archivist, and she wants you to know, new to the job. "I thought he was a ghost," said an amazed Tidings Snowburger, resident yard mower and bush trimmer. "Heavens, where and to whom do I send flowers?" said Joy Snowburger, wife of Bunch and mother to little Mary, who took one look at Mr. Norwood Boyd's body as it was wheeled into the Snowburger's workroom and said simply and affirmatively, "Dead." "Folks forgot he was alive," said Bunch Snowburger. "I forgot too." There was a real sadness in his voice. It is rumored that years ago Mr. Norwood Boyd returned from many years at sea and locked himself up in his house, never to be heard from again. Why, and what happened after that? We may never know. A letter of direction written in Norwood Boyd's hand was found on the bed next to him. He has requested no funeral and instead sends words that he has other plans, although they have not as yet been discovered or disclosed. We here at Snowburgers await any forthcoming news so we can figure out what to do. If someone is kin to Norwood Boyd, please contact Snowburgers immediately. We have a new batch of oversized Snowburgers handkerchiefs now being laundered and ironed by the all-new Sunshine Laundry, in baskets placed strategically around the Serenity Suite, so don't worry about tears when you come forth to tell your story. We've got you covered. As always, Snowburgers remains a place of family comfort and repose. When you arrive for your loved one's funeral, you can rest assured that your every need will be attended to, from the moment the door is opened by our greeter, Peach Sugars, "So glad to see you," to the moment you are ready to depart, when our new puppy, Surprise Snowburger, walks, runs, twirls, jumps, yips with you to your car to see you safely home. All right, and here's the start to chapter 11. Every chapter starts with a quote. This quote is by Walt Whitman. "I believe a leaf of grass is no less than the journey work of the stars." Eudora Welty did not come home. Honey would not be comforted and finally fell asleep in her father's lap in a rocker on the front porch. House sat on the porch swing and listened to the chain creak as he rocked himself back and forth. An afternoon breeze tugged at the corners of the porch and thunder grumbled in the distance. "Thunder makes me think of your mama," his father said. "Seems like every time it rains she had sheets hanging on the line." "I remember," said House. "You do?" His father shifted Honey in his lap. "We pulled the sheets off the line in the rain," said House. We laughed. "We sure did," said his father. "Those were the days," he sighed. How was the pageant practice? Terrible. The whole team signed up by their mamas and the game is on the same day. Clebo thinks I'm supposed to fix it, but I can't. And Frances, she's worse than ever. His father nodded as if he were processing all this information carefully. Can nothing be done about the date? House shook his head no. It would be a shame not to play your game, said his father. House scratched his cheek. I don't know what to do about it. His father watched the dark clouds move in. Your mama loved baseball, he said. Do you still have that glove she gave you just before she died? Yes, sir. I thought Honey might use it one day, but she seems to have other ambitions, said his father. Thunder crackled on its way across the gray sky, and House looked over at the empty clothesline. Is there going to be a funeral for Mr. Norwood? I don't believe you wanted one, said his father. That's what Pip told me today when I was in town. Oh. It seemed strange to die and not have anyone mark the occasion, doesn't it? Said his father. Yes, sir. House had marked the occasion. He had been there. The wind rattled the pecans in the trees. The hidden sun cast the yard in a rosy-edged silver glow. You did well this past year, son, said his father. Yes, sir. I know you didn't want to do it. No, sir. He had gotten used to it, though. He had gotten good at sitting by the bedside of a quiet old man. It wasn't bad, once I got used to it. I know, said his father. I could tell. Leonard Jackson stood up with the sleeping Honey in his arms. We're going to get a soaker, he said. Why don't you lie down for a while, too? You were up half the night. We got practice this afternoon, said House. Not in a thunderstorm, said his father. Maybe it'll pass, said House. Maybe, said his father. Is Frances related to Mr. Norwood Boyd? Can't say as she is. The sky darkened and lightning flashed in the distance, followed by another low rumble. Eudora's at Mr. Norwood's house for sure, said House, and she's afraid of storms. We'll go get her if she doesn't come back, said his father. She'll be all right. Are you staying home? House scratched a mosquito bite on his elbow. Can't mow in the rain, said his father. I'll tinker in the shed. I've got sandwiches in the kitchen, if you want 'em. Rain dotted the dirt by the pecan trees, setting off a dusty, sleepy smell. House stopped in his bedroom to get the shoebox of baseball cards he'd found on the front porch after his elbow had been set in a cast for the second time, after it had been determined that the break was worse than they thought. No one knew where the box had come from. House had asked his father, Clebo, the boys, but none of them knew. He and Clebo had spent hours on rainy days poring over the well-loved, beat-up cards. They memorized statistics, pretended to be one player and then the next, but it was Sandy Koufax, a lefty, like House, who had captured House's imagination. House had even gone to the Bay Springs Library to look up more about Sandy Koufax. Miss Dina DeRose, the librarian, had found articles from old Life magazines to share with House. House knew all about Koufax. He felt close to him. Now, while the thunder grumbled to the coming rain and the breeze cooled the afternoon, House sat on his sleeping porch and pulled out the cards at random. Several Willie Mays, a slew of Mickey Mantle, 3 Roger Maris, and on it went. Jackie Robinson, Don Drysdale, Roberto Clemente, Whitey Ford, giants of baseball from years past. He pulled out a Koufax card and stared at that serious face, then turned the card over to reread the statistics he had memorized. Sandy Koufax had pitched that perfect game in 1965. A perfect game. No runs, no hits, no errors. Each hitter came to the plate, swung, and struck out, one after another, until the game was won. Sandy had pitched 4 career no-hitters. He led the National League in shutouts 3 times, in strikeouts 4 times, in wins 3 times. He made 6 All-Star appearances, won the National League Most Valuable Player Award in 1963, was World Series MVP twice, once in 1963 and again in that golden year of 1965's perfect game. House stretched out on the bed and closed his eyes as he listened to the katydids call from the pines. Their insistent summer song melted into a dream and became the song-like voice of Vin Scully, announcing from the Dodgers Stadium press box, "On the mound tonight for the Los Angeles Dodgers, number 32, the great left-hander, Sandy Koufax." And there he was, House, shaking hands with his hero, Koufax. Koufax smiled at House and handed him the baseball. Then he walked to the bench, disappearing with each step. Now, House stood on the pitcher's mound alone. He looked up. The stadium was a 3-tiered wonder packed with screaming fans. The crowd chanted his name. He could smell the hot dogs, the mustard, the peanuts, the sweat. He tapped the rubber on the mound with the tip of his cleats. He shook out his left arm, his pitching arm. It felt just fine. He clutched the ball in his left hand, gripped the stitches with his fingertips, and looked intently into the glove on his right. He could see every crease in that glove, like a detailed roadmap of every game he'd ever played. The roar of the crowd faded, and he found himself sitting on the front porch now, back home in Mabel, Mississippi. He was 6 years old, and he had a brand new glove. He rubbed it with neat's foot oil, massaging it with both hands, down each finger, the oil smelling like promise, all over his glove. He worked an old baseball into the pocket, turning it around and around, coating it with the oil as well. He could see every stitch in that baseball, every nick. He also saw a name scratched into it, Elizabeth, his mother's name. She called to him. He tied a string around the glove with the ball in it so it would develop a deep pocket, making it easier to catch the ball. Then he floated, the way bodies do in a dream, off to find his mother. He smelled the applesauce cake in the kitchen, and he heard his mother singing to herself, singing the song she had sung to House when he was little, the symphony song. "After the dazzle of day is gone," she sang. His mother was high in the sky in the same cirrus clouds he'd seen over Norwood Boyd's house that morning. He joined her, light as a feather and free from all worry. She kissed him right in the middle of his forehead, smiled, and looked deeply into his eyes. He saw her perfectly, for that was the blessing of dreams. He could remember every detail now. The comfort was enormous. House began to cry. His mother said, "You'll be fine now, House. Remember to listen for the symphony true." The symphony! House sprang up in his dream. "I have to tell you," he began, but his mother dissolved, faded into the cloud, became a hazy memory again. The sky disappeared. House was falling back to earth and darkness. That is the end of chapter 11. And a few questions. We always do questions at the end of each chapter. A few questions. Who left the baseball cards on House's porch? It doesn't tell us in this chapter. This author, Deborah Wiles, she does a lot of hinting at things and making you wonder and then not giving you all the information. That kind of a writing technique really keeps us interested as readers. I'm wondering who it is. Who do you think dropped the baseball cards off for House? And it sounds like whoever did it, it's a pretty generous thing to do. Those baseball players that were mentioned earlier in the chapter who are on those cards are really famous baseball players. And it sounds like House got a whole lot of them. And it wasn't his dad, it wasn't Clebo, it wasn't the boys. I wonder who it is. So that's something to be thinking about. Maybe make a prediction before we read on. And then the ending, the symphony, House sprang up in his dream. I have to tell you, I wonder if his mother hadn't dissolved in his dream. I wonder what he would have said to her about the symphony. All right, 4th grade, until next time, we are done for today, and I'll see you later.